Hello and thank you for watching this ag forecast for the Canadian Prairie. I'm Andrew Pritchard, Senior Meteorologist with Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, we've got a storm system departing right now that's brought some cooler air on the backside here. A couple areas here dropped below freezing early this morning. Again, you can see this wave departing, the front kind of bowing out like that. We've also got a big wave sitting off the coast of the Pacific Ocean that's going to bring some precipitation in here. Not until we get to the other side of the weekend into early next week. We'll be on the dry side here over the next 3 to 5 days. On the dry side with a warming trend, which again is some good news here for some of you who have been a little on the chilly side over the last 7 to 10 days or so with a couple of these shots of cooler air coming in. Now, we've been talking a lot about wildfire smoke from those western U.S. wildfires and some of those across southern British Columbia. The smoke has been especially thick over the last couple of days across southwestern portions of the area. This front is clearing some of the smoke, but as that wave approaches off the Pacific coast right now, that's going to be driving some of the smoke back into at least southern portions of British Columbia and probably southern Alberta as well. And that could include the rest of the prairie as we head deeper into the weekend and potentially early next week. The radar is clear. Again, we've got dry air moving in on the backside of this front, cool and dry air. Some of those freezing temperatures generally in a corridor here across central portions of Saskatchewan into east central portions of Alberta. And again, kind of flirting with a couple of degrees below freezing across that corridor. So what's going on is we've got this departing wave, this kind of big upper level low across the Hudson Bay. That's what's dragging all the cold air in on the back side of it. We've also got this wave sitting off the Pacific coast. This has been just kind of floating back and forth east and west over the last 1 to 2 weeks, at times really helping to exacerbate the wildfire conditions here across portions of the eastern U.S., but this one is finally going to get a nudge from this second or third trailing wave here across the Aleutian Islands. This one's going to bring some pretty fast jet stream winds around its base, giving this wave a nudge, sending it eastward across the Pacific Northwest and eventually into the Canadian Prairie as we head through the, again, end of the weekend and early next week. So what happens when we do that? Well, again, cool air coming in on the backside of the first trough. After this one gets a kick and starts moving ashore, we're going to drive some ridging across the prairie, and that is going to allow some warm air advection across the region, allowing temperatures to get back to a little bit closer to where they should be, if not a little bit warmer than average as we get into the weekend. So we'll look at the temperature anomaly forecast then over the next 10 days or so. Again, cooler temperatures settling in across the prairie right now, but the good news is it doesn't park itself. It's going to continue to move off to the south and to the east across the Midwest and the Great Lakes as we head through the next day or two. And again, as that wave across the Pacific starts to move in, we'll start to see some warmth spreading back across the prairie as we get into the weekend, with temperatures actually a little bit on the warmer side, probably Saturday and Sunday. Now, as the wave moves from the Pacific coast into the Canadian Prairie, we'll see an opportunity for some rain, some increased cloud cover across the region, so we may see those temperatures reset downward in some areas just a little bit as we head into early next week. But then we're watching a potential ridge building back in across North America as we get into the last week or so of September, which could mean some warmth again across the prairie. So it's been a little bit rough over the last week or two with some of these shots of cold air, but it doesn't look like this pattern is going to last forever. We're not plunging into an early winter or anything like that. It, in fact, looks like we may trend a little bit warmer than average overall over the next 10 to 15 days. So again, those temperatures trending down near the freezing mark from east central portions of Alberta down into central portions of Saskatchewan. This is going to be the coldest morning as we warm up today and then cool back down overnight. We could see some sub-freezing temperatures north of the ag belt here across northern portions of Alberta. Far northern portions of Alberta, and then northern, maybe third of Saskatchewan, and then central and northern portions of Manitoba. But again, the ag belt remaining at least a couple of degrees above freezing as we head into the overnight tonight. So we're looking at the precipitation forecast from the European model here, taking it through Saturday morning on the left. So we'll call this through Saturday AM. And then this takes it all the way out through Monday. And so you can see the difference here. We're dry all the way through the weekend across the prairie, but then we add in a splash of precipitation as we head through the end. This doesn't look like writing at all. I apologize for that. I could have just done without. We get a splash of precipitation across the prairie here. Really uneven and overall light precipitation amounts here as we head into the weekend, or the other side of the weekend and early next week. And we'll talk about why that is in here in just a moment. So here are the jet stream winds. We've got this big low over the Hudson Bay. We've got this wave that's been sitting over the Pacific for what feels like an eternity, and then we've got this wave that's finally going to help things get moving. So here's what happens. We hit play on the animation. Here comes the big blast of winds around the base of that trough there, giving this thing a nudge, so it starts moving ashore as we get into Friday night and Saturday morning. Again, ridging here in advance, behind this departing wave, ahead of the arriving wave. That's going to help us warm up as we head into the end of the week, into the weekend. And then as this wave finally moves overhead, this is going to bring in that chance for, again, just some scattered precipitation across the prairie as we get the next week started. So quite a bit of dry and cold air coming in on the backside of this trough, and this is actually going to drag this cool dry air all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to take a minute. We've got a hurricane in the way, Hurricane Sally, sitting over the southeastern U.S. right now. But as we get into Friday, we're finally going to drag this front all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. So as our next wave is approaching from the west, there it is, you see the spiral shape show up. It's moving into an already cool and dry air mass. So we'll bring some moisture with us from the Pacific Ocean as we move across the Rockies into the prairie, but we're not going to have the big fetch of deep Gulf moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, again with that cold front making its way down there right before this wave approaches. So the result, we get high pressure lasting through the weekend. That keeps us dry. This wave finally gets moving here out of the Pacific Northwest into the Canadian Prairie as we get into, this is late Saturday night, getting into Sunday, and now Monday. And so you're seeing some precipitation there, much of that wrapping around on the backside here, again, as we're just not bringing up much in the way of deep Gulf of Mexico moisture. We're just bringing a little bit of moisture here from the Pacific and then wringing it out across the prairie. So most of the rain here is going to be pretty light, pretty disorganized, probably a few millimeters, maybe up to 10 millimeters in some spots. I do think there's the opportunity as this thing kind of slowly makes its way through that kind of where the axis of precipitation pivots, you could get some locally heavy rainfall. And so I'm showing you the European model and the GFS, the European on the left, GFS on the right. And again, you see the same thing here with a pretty, disorganized but broadly light precipitation totals between 5 to 15 millimeters. But then both models kind of just putting a localized heavy spot or two in there where maybe you could get north of an inch, north of 25 millimeters of rainfall. But again, pinning down where that's going to be is not something we're going to see at this range. And also it's going to be relatively localized, so not likely if you're watching this video that you're going to get that heavy rainfall. So let's look at the temperatures to finish it up. Again, we're on a warming trend here over the next few days. Calgary, you'll see that reset downward to around 20 degrees as we wrap up the weekend. Edmonton, here is your temperature forecast. The warm-up is more dramatic as you head off to the east. Look at that, a high of 13 today, all the way up to 26 on Saturday afternoon. Here's the slight reset downward as the Pacific wave moves over here, bringing us some cloud cover and some precipitation, and then potentially warming up into the end of September. Regina, here's your dramatic warm-up, and then Winnipeg as well. 11 today, 15 Friday, into the low to mid-20s as we head through the weekend into early next week. Have a great day. I'll talk to you all again on Friday morning.